wishes to speak for public comment? All right. We will move on to agenda item number 2, the approval of the minutes. If you will review those minutes, or if you've already reviewed them, we would entertain a motion to accept the minutes of October 23rd.
Motion to accept.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
All right. Any discussion? All right. You have to call a roll. Excuse me.
Mr. Adams?
Here.
Mr. Azale?
Aye.
Mr. Parsley?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Turnbow?
Aye.
Chair Latour?
All right. All right. So now we're going to go to item number 3, which, of course, if you recall, we asked to have some 2 firms come and interview with us today. I see we have, there we go. And I think first up.
They'll show up over here in a second.
Okay. First up is Donegal and Associates.
No, the other.
Oh, excuse me. Forgive me.
That's all right.
The other first one is Superlative. Excuse me. I apologize for that.
There they are.
Welcome, guys.
Hi, everyone.
So you guys have been asked to come make a presentation to the Murfreesboro Sports Authority, by which we're all here gathered today to interview 2 firms. Obviously, you know the second one now that I told you, but we're glad that you're able to join us. Appreciate your interest in the Sports Authority and the direction we're going in. So thank you very much for that. With that, I think what we'd like to do is just, if it's okay with the rest of the authority board, is just have you guys introduce yourselves and just, as you always do in an interview, tell us a little about yourself. And we'll hopefully derive some questions after that. So we'll take it away.
Great. We can do a round of introductions, and then we actually plan on sharing a brief presentation deck, if that's okay.
Yes.
Great. I can kick us off. My name is Claire Reddy. I'm the Vice President of Client Services here at the Superlative Group. So I assist our team in a lot of the administrative tasks upon project initiation as well as throughout our projects. I also assist in the development of our creative material for our sales team. I'll pass it off to Sean Kane.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate you all having us here today. My name is Sean Kane. I'm Senior Director of Corporate Partnerships and Development for Superlative. I serve on our revenue generating side, so once we are retained by our clients and have completed the Phase 1 valuation process, I help take the opportunities and assets out to the market, introduce them to the brands, and eventually convince them to partner with our clients in the space. Justin?
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Justin Brodsky. I'm our Vice President of Analytics and Valuation. I help lead our valuation division, working with clients to build out an asset inventory and valuation of all their marketable benefits to support corporate sponsorship and naming rights programs. Really excited to be here today, and thanks for having us. I'll let Walter go next.
Thanks, Justin. And I'm Walter Franco with Victus Advisors. We are part of the team with Superlative. I am a principal and the research director for all of our studies that we conduct nationwide. We focus on analysis and feasibility studies for sports and entertainment venues, large and small, throughout the country.
And with that, I can go ahead and share our presentation. So, let's see. All right. Is everyone able to see this okay?
Yes.
All right, great.
Thanks, Claire. Appreciate it. So we just wanted to kind of give a background and an overview of our firm and then, of course, of Victus Advisors as well. So just quickly about Superlative, our firm was founded in 1994, and we're headquartered in Cleveland, Ohio, as well as with a satellite office in London of the UK. So we work in both the United States, Canada, as well as over in Europe. And we are an industry-leading team of sales executive, valuation analysts, attorneys, and accountants that really focus on that sponsorship marketing process from what we call our Phase 1 asset identification and valuation, all the way through our Phase 2 strategic sales campaign, negotiation, closing, and auditing of partnerships. We really are the foremost expert in this space, especially in the public sector. I would say about 80% of our work is in the municipal space, working with local cities and counties, governments, and quasi-government entities, helping them realize and then generate revenue for naming rights and other sorts of corporate partnerships across their asset portfolio. As I mentioned, from 1994 till now, over the 30 years, we valued and negotiated over more than $3.5 billion worth of naming rights, pouring rights, and sponsorship opportunities for our clients.
Great, and just quickly again with Victus Advisors, we were founded in 2012. We're an independently owned and operated sports business consulting firm. We're based out of Park City, Utah, but as I mentioned, we do studies throughout the country and also some projects in Mexico. We've actually done a little bit of work in Tennessee as well. We just completed a master plan feasibility study for Eastridge, Tennessee, which is part of the Chattanooga market, and also for the University of Tennessee with an indoor and outdoor athletic facility. We're a national leader in providing objective analysis and recommendations for sports venues, sports operators, sports properties, athletic departments. We're very much in the know with trends for sports and youth and amateur sports tourism and how that affects communities. Similar to Superlative, the majority of our clients are public municipalities, so we understand the needs that these communities have to be a community asset with these facilities, but also to potentially generate economic impact, and also more importantly, as it relates to this project, to have facilities and opportunities to generate revenue and to be sustainable in the long term.
And really our mission as we put together this response to the request for qualifications was, to focus on maximizing revenue generation for you all there at the Murfreesboro Sports Authority, and really for all of our clients, but over delivering that value for you all in this process. And I think, as we kind of get into the meat and potatoes of how both of our processes work, the relationship that we have with Victus and the work that we've done, as you see some of the relevant experience that both of our firms have on your screen now, it really covers the entire ecosystem of what you all are trying to do with this project and with the Sports Authority. From the beginning of identifying the opportunities and trying to realize what is possible and what is available within the assets and the venues that you have within the organization, through the determining of the revenue generating opportunities and what those values are, to the physical selling and generation of that potential and incremental revenue. We really have worked with Victus across a number of different projects and in a very various ways to really provide success and generate that revenue for the clients that we've worked with. So I think that turns it over to kind of, Justin and his team, Walter and his team, to kind of share the background on how their process works. And then we can kind of share the valuation side and then the sales side as well. So Walter, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Sean. And this piece is really fundamental in how we would approach this with Superlative, in giving them the analysis and the data that they need to really give the city of Murfreesboro a good understanding and evaluation of how they can value their assets. And so first, as part of our proposed scope, is a historical operations review of the current facilities that are available that are under the purview of the authority. And that's looking at really every revenue source, all the expenses, the programming, the local rentals, tournament rentals, food and beverage, of course, and sales, and anything to understand historically how that's happened, and really to look at how, if it was impacted by the pandemic. One of the things that we've really seen in youth and amateur sports in the industry is that although it's not pandemic and recession proof, the sports tourism, it's certainly resilient And it's one of the few industries that have a really fast bounce back. And so a lot of communities, and what we've seen with a lot of work that we've been doing over the last 2 years, is that a lot of communities have recognized, hey, we need to get on not just sports tourism, but also maximizing revenues with these operations, because the money is there to be had if we have the right system in place, the right inventory, and the right marketing with these facilities. So that's really where we're going to understand the basis for what's happened historically, and that would lead into then benchmarking and comparing what's been done in Murfreesboro with the authority against 5 to 7 comparable markets and complexes, and looking at how these facilities and how these markets have been able to generate revenue. Previously, for these last 5 to 10 years, it was very uncommon to have youth and amateur sports facilities to have corporate sponsorships or naming sponsorship opportunities, but that has totally flipped recently, where now it's very common to have founding partners, naming rights sponsors, a lot of different partnerships to, again, maximize revenue that's being derived from these types of facilities. So we would be looking at these comparable markets and how that's relatable and applicable to Murfreesboro. At the end of this analysis, these two, then we would do a presentation in conjunction with Superlative to show our research that we've done, the analysis, and the revenue opportunity recommendations to the authority, which would then feed into the recommendations that Superlative would run with there.
And to add to that, our valuation process is really complementary to the revenue generation opportunity analysis process that Walter just outlined. We really follow, at its core, a data-driven process when we're looking to quantify the fair market value of sponsorship and marketing assets. Brand marketers, sponsors today are looking to be more strategic with their investment and their resources, and providing data that can support the audience that you all are delivering with your facilities, programs, and events is critical to supporting the outbound sales process that Sean and our sales team can help with. So when we go through evaluation process, we're looking to understand the full scope of really all the different marketing channels that you could operate, whether that's physical signage within facilities, or temporary signage at events, marketing communication tools that you're utilizing to reach the community, whether that's website, social media, mobile app, email communications, to in-person experiential activations that brands and marketers could potentially have on site. And we take that data to quantify impressions, which is supported by market-relevant media rates. That helps marketers in your region of the country understand the value in comparison to other major advertising spends that they might have locally. So it would be very relevant to your marketplace, the numbers that we would recommend and ultimately represent in a sales campaign. In partnership with our in-house counsel, we would do a contract and policy analysis to ensure that the Sports Authority and your facilities are ultimately equipped to sustain partnership negotiation. So when you're getting into contract with a potential sponsor or naming rights partner, that you have the appropriate protections and policy language to ultimately healthfully activate and sustain that partnership. And then lastly, Walter touched on it a little bit, but industry benchmarking is a core component to our exercise. So looking at naming rights and sponsorship agreements that have been successfully executed in the past. We never want to recommend a dollar value associated with a sponsorship opportunity that hasn't been historically bared in the market. And if we are, there should be a considerable reason for it that is supported with the data. So, those are some of the core pillars of our process. And I'd be remiss if I also didn't mention there's an intangible component to valuation as well. We realize the reality of what some of your facilities and programs represent to your local community, and that's a unique intangible value to your audience. And so we look through kind of a full set of intangible qualities of your assets and how that could potentially support some of the unique objectives of marketers and businesses in your community. And I think Sean's going to touch on our sales process next.
I'll unmute myself, I apologize. So our sales process typically follows the completion of that valuation, and really it's focused on, I think, transparent communication with our client, and then ensuring and then driving as much revenue as possible back to the client, and then delivering value to the brands that we're bringing in as well. So that process will start with us in a prospecting phase where we'll use databases and resources that our firm subscribes to find a list of companies and organizations and brands that would be quality prospects for whatever opportunity it is that we're focused on within the city portfolio of assets. That's something as I think you'll see a recurring theme as I walk through these 3 or 4 different bullets here, that transparency and communication is at the forefront of how we work with our clients. So that prospect list will be shared with you all or whoever our main points of contact are throughout this project, to be vetted, to make sure that there's no pre-existing relationships that we need to avoid or be aware of, that there's no categories or brands that we need to stay away from for whatever reasons those may be, or if there's any that we may have missed or that you feel would be appropriate to add to that list. From there, we would start our outreach, which is typically our project team of salespeople drafting handwritten letters and then following up with phone calls, emails, and virtual and in-person meetings to vet the brands that we're reaching out to, and to ensure that we're chasing after the ones that would have the most interest in an opportunity like this. And then we would want to bring in the team that we're working with at the city to kind of help see through and then also start to develop that relationship with the brand or organization that has kind of come to the forefront as that's going to be a naming rights or a sponsor. At the end of the day, this engagement from a brand and naming rights and sponsorship perspective is going to be between that organization and then the city of Murfreesboro. So while Superlative is brokering that engagement, the long-term relationship is going to be between you two, and we want to ensure that everyone is comfortable and ready for marriage, if you will, as it relates to the partnership. So we always try to bring the team that we're working with in as early as possible and when it makes the most sense. But that, again, is always up to the client and what they're most comfortable with. We're also a full-service agency, so we are able to help in the negotiation and the completing of the agreements for naming rights and sponsorships. We have in-house counsel and a legal team that has worked on thousands of naming rights and sponsorship contracts over the course of their career. And we have those kind of templates and expertise that can assist in ensuring that the city and its constituents are covered, in the contractual process. And then being able to assist in kind of the public-facing side of this, which is, the announcement of the naming rights partnership or a sponsorship, ensuring that it is handled correctly in the press and the release to the public, all of those things that we have expertise and specialize in as well. We can also help assist in the post-sales process, which is contract fulfillment, the managing and auditing of ongoing rights, activation and audit around the current partnerships or future partnerships. And then I think finally, this entire process, as I mentioned, is a transparent and open communication, and that's shown by our progress report. So we always like to set up, whether it's biweekly or monthly update calls to keep everyone in the loop on the activity and the progress that our sales team has been doing. And then utilizing that time to help you all answer our questions if there's certain things that we need to track down for a brand, or if there's a question that we received in the process that we weren't able to answer and need more information on, or vice versa, for you all to be able to ask us questions, and to just have kind of a standing time throughout this engagement to be able to carve out questions and gather information, etc. So that is kind of the high-level overview of our firms and the work that we've done. We're really excited about the opportunity to work with you all in this process. I think we have hopefully left enough time to answer some of your questions. But so I'll happy to jump off my soapbox, go on mute, and let you all jump in with any inquiries that you have.
Well, thank you, guys. That was a lot of good information. We appreciate the time you spent with us, and I will open it up to our authority members if anyone has any questions about anything that they would like to hear more about.
Sure. I have one question. I think I saw the Memphis Grizzlies logo up there. Can you talk a little bit about what you've done with the Grizzlies?
Yeah, or unless you guys have a superlative result, but with Victus, we actually did customer service research for the in-stadium or in-arena experience, and through that, we were able to provide information to the Memphis Grizzlies on essentially better service, better improvements that were needed, maybe to the concourse, et cetera. So that was more of a customer survey research study that we did for them.
I noticed the Hamilton County Sports Authority on there. Give us an example there, sort of what, I mean, I'm very familiar with Chattanooga and their facilities. Give us a relevant example there of some of the stuff that they were able to at least learn or obtain through working with you guys.
Yeah, so that was in conjunction. So they were one of our stakeholders as part of the study that we conducted with Eastridge. So Eastridge has, if you're familiar, since you're familiar with Chattanooga, their complex is called Camp Jordan. And so we were working in conjunction with Hamilton County to see what potential funding sources there would be for additional infrastructure there. So they don't have an indoor, we found demand through our study that there's demand for an indoor sports center. They currently just have outdoor, I think it was 14 rectangular fields and 13 ball diamonds or diamond fields. And we found through our research, we found that there was demand for an indoor sports center, a multi-court facility. And so that was just completed earlier this year, and the county and the city are currently trying to see if they can collaborate on having a facility that would potentially either be owned by Hamilton County or operated by the county through their authority through Chattanooga Sports, excuse me. And so that's currently in process, but we worked with them as a stakeholder as part of the project.
I had a question about the sales process that you touched on briefly. So you mentioned writing letters and phone calls and all of those things to prospects. First question is, how long does that typically take? Someone in sales, myself, I understand that can be a minute. So what's your kind of life cycle on that sales process? And then two, do you guys have examples of your valuation versus the funding that you actually closed on? So is it a certain percentage, 90% of our valuations we typically, receive in sponsorship? Is it lower, higher? Give me a little bit about that if you could.
Yeah, appreciate that question. And I think for the first part of it, the sales process for naming rights and large-scale sponsorships is typically a longer engagement than, say, selling tickets or, something on the smaller scale, because I think when we go out to the market, typically we're asking for sometimes, millions and millions of dollars from brands to have naming rights or corporate sponsorship. So it's really tough for a director of marketing to sign off on that. Typically our conversations are going through the CEO's office and the C-suite office, and that can take time, especially once you get into the contracting phase where the lawyers are getting involved and there's back and forth with red lines. So I would say on average, we typically see the process take somewhere between 12 to 18 months. Now that has outliers. There's been times where, we've completed a naming rights deal in 6 months and shorter, and there's been other times where it's taken that full, 15 to 18 months to find a qualified prospect and get through the process with them to being able to announce a naming rights partnership. So I wouldn't say there's an exact range, but I think we see from the most of our work that it falls in between that 12 to 18 month range, with those outliers certainly always on the table. It's all just dependent on timing, leadership, who's in charge of brands, and really how gung-ho they are, when we reach out to them on this kind of process and if they want to do something like this. And then, I don't know, Justin, if you have any comments on the valuation side. I think, in my experience and with the firm, I don't want to put an exact percentage on it, but we've been pretty close and spot on to our valuation and getting that kind of revenue for our clients. I think we do a really good job in that valuation of benchmarking and making sure that we are within, the parameters of other opportunities that might be out there and things that we can point to. And we can really use that valuation in our negotiations to make sure that we're getting that number that we've presented to you all as a part of that valuation process. I know Justin didn't go too deep into it, but when we do deliver that valuation, we give a range. So typically, let's say, for example, just to make numbers easy, the park is valued at $100,000 annually for naming rights. We will present in our valuation a range of $90,000 to $130,000 that we think that naming rights is plausible for that particular asset. When we go out to the market, we will take it out to the market at $130,000 annually. We do that with the intention that a brand is going to try and negotiate us down to a lower price so that they think that they're getting better ROI and a deal on the asset and on the marketability of it. What we know in the background, right, is that at the entire time it was valued at $100,000, and when the brand feels that they're getting a $30,000 discount, if you will, on a deal, we know that we're getting the fair market value for it. So that's kind of the process that we take when we step into a naming rights campaign. We always take that out at the highest level. We don't tell the brands that it's at that level. We let them kind of talk us down into a more appropriate number that we all know is the fair market value.
Yeah, and I would just quickly add, we'll never present a value on a sponsorship opportunity that we wouldn't be fully prepared to represent in the open marketplace. And I think one of the unique values of our firm is that working with us, you get the entirety of the team. So our valuation team is working hand in hand with our sales team every day, who is out in the market actively having conversations with brands that are setting their budgets to make these types of investments, or at least socializing these types of investments with brand sponsors. And so, the executive review with our sales team is really an important part of our evaluation process that we really didn't touch on, but it has really active market relevance. So I just wanted to add that as well. I think we just closed a sponsorship agreement, which should be getting announced here soon in Durham, North Carolina, on a major performing arts venue. That was sold to the dollar amount that we delivered in the phase one valuation process. And that's a major multi-million-dollar agreement over several years. So that would be a good example.
And to add to that, we're working through a contract up in Detroit right now where we're actually going to sell it at the highest level that we took it out to the market at. So it happens, it's different in every example. Just kind of depends on how that process goes with each individual client.
I would ask that, if we were to engage you guys, we obviously want to be great partners together as a partnership. And so is there any advice, or do you have any, what would you expect of us as it relates to, this journey together?
Yeah, it's a great question. Walter, Justin, do we want to maybe go in order for each of our parts of the business, and then?
Sure. I guess from our standpoint is, given our national expertise in working with facilities throughout the country, and specifically for facilities that are youth and amateur sports related, sometimes professional and collegiate as well, we have an understanding of working with different communities and different needs, and understanding what their assets are, what their opportunities, and what the gaps are. And by us going through that whole process with you from the beginning, from the ground up, it allows us to really help you and work with you together through this process to say, okay, these are our opportunities, these are our strengths, these are our weaknesses, and here are some opportunities that we can increase or enhance our revenue generated opportunities. And that's through that understanding, that foundation, that's where, without giving everything away here that Superlative will do, that's where we feed into this tandem team that we have with Superlative.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and to piggyback off of that, the valuation process, I would say our success is always tied to participation and collaboration with our clients. Because we follow a data-centric process, they'll have some upfront information and data collection. Some of that will likely be covered by Walter and his team as they work organically through that process as well. But ultimately, we want to understand the audience that you're reaching on a daily and annual basis across all the different facilities and infrastructure that you have to offer that potentially could support, an eventual sponsorship and advertising sales campaign. So I would say the biggest lift is kind of up front in terms of just collecting some of that first-party data. We prioritize first-party data from our clients because that is ultimately stole from the source, and we don't want to look at secondary sources that could potentially come into question when we're out in the market trying to support and justify a significant long-term investment from a partner.
Thank you.
And then I'll wrap up just kind of with the sales campaign. I think we always, request and hope that there's just an openness to creativity around partnership opportunities. I think brands, as you all know, and you probably see in your everyday lives, they're consistently becoming more innovative as how they engage the consumer and the customer. It's actually a reason why I think the municipal space has grown so much in the sponsorships realm is they've been needing to find new ways other than TV advertisements and mail-in advertisements to reach the consumer. So oftentimes, we'll take an opportunity out to the market and the brands will come back and say, hey, could we do something like this? We think it would be really cool. We think it would benefit the city and its constituents, and we think we'd make a really big impact on the project. We always find, the most success when we work with clients that are open to considering those types of opportunities. And not saying that everything has to be a yes, but maybe working towards a yes is the better way to put it. Because there are a lot of instances where brands will want to think creatively and come back with new and unique ways to activate and innovate the partnership. And it always works well when we have a client that's willing and able to, at least consider those types of cool new ways to bring brands into the community.
Can you give some examples of that? Like, let's just say, probably not going to happen, but Nike. Do they want on-site, capabilities at the soccer fields to show off new equipment or footwear? Do you have examples of some of those activations that you're talking about?
Yeah, I think one, I'll try and think as I'm talking here, one that would be a little bit more tied into Parks and Rec, but we just worked, we currently still do, but we're working with a zoo up in Rhode Island, and the partnership pitch was for an orthopedics organization, the local one, to come in and host what they call the Wellness Walk, which was essentially they invited their 55-plus individuals, clients, patients, to come out to the zoo. And I grew up, my grandparents, they would go to the local mall and walk around, and sometimes I would tag along. It was one of the coolest Saturdays of the morning that I had all month. But really what the goal was to get them out from the mall and bring them into an open-aired space where it was maybe a little bit more healthier for their lungs, and they got to experience the animals and walk around before the zoo gates opened. It's not something the zoo that we were working with had really contemplated before, but they were open and they were willing to at least go down the path of what this might look like, and really ultimately it came out to be a really cool partnership. We're still working through it, so we haven't quite gotten to the finish line yet, but it is one that there's been openness, and it wasn't no, we've never done that before, so we're not going to do something like that, but rather, oh, that's really interesting. How can we benefit from that, and also work with the partner to help them and make this mutually beneficial. So that's a more recent example that I can think of. Walter, I don't know if you've had any experience there, or Justin or Claire, if something comes to mind that might be more Parks and Rec focused.
Yeah, I think we have a couple other case studies that we can probably share. City of Frisco comes to mind. We sold a multi-year sponsorship to Children's Health. That included some branding elements around some of their youth ball fields. The softball on deck circle was actually rebranded with the Children's Health logo. Obviously, healthcare, parks, and recreation is a tailor-made fit, especially to hospitals that are trying to really engage in the communities that they service. UCI Health and the Great Park out in Irvine, California would be another one. That was actually a naming rights partnership to a massive outdoor sports complex in Irvine. And so, yeah, maybe I know we shared some case studies in part of our proposal, but happy to provide those as well if they weren't included.
Can you go into how your fee works with Superlative and Victus? How does that work? Is it one fee? Is it split? If you can go into that for me.
Yeah, so as it relates to that phase one valuation, we would have you all pay one fee to one of the two organizations, and then we would handle the way that we'll figure that out on our side on the back end. But so I believe if my number is correct, we offered phase one at $75,000. That would be a one-time fee that we would do to complete the valuation. And then the phase two is a monthly retainer. So I think we provided two options to you all in our proposal, one at $5,000 a month at 20%, or $7,500 at 15%. So happy to discuss, those two options as well. We always like to provide a couple of different choices for our potential clients, because everyone's in a different and unique position from a business aspect.
Sure. And what's the length of the relationship?
Again, so I think, we would request to have between 12 and 18 months in terms of an engagement on the sales side, right? So once there's the completion of that valuation, then we would engage in the sales campaign, in which we would look to have anywhere between 12 to 18 months. And that's something I think that we can discuss on what that number is, if it's 12 or if it's 18. But we, again, as I mentioned kind of earlier in the call, is that's typically the range of what it takes for these sorts of naming right opportunities and sponsorship opportunities to come to fruition. So we want to make sure that we have ample time in the market to get them across the line, and ensure that we're generating as much revenue as possible for you all during the term of our agreement.
Okay, one more question. I'll go ahead.
I was just going to jump in, and then from our standpoint, from our research, that would lead up to Superlative is about an 8-week process, which is what we proposed in our, which is what we were proposing. Excuse me.
Okay. And how much of your time is spent here in the city?
As much as needed. I think so I'll pause. Maybe good again to go in order, if Walter, Justin, if you guys want to share kind of what that looks like, and then I can jump in on the sales side.
Yeah, so for us, it would be 2 trips at the beginning of the project for the kickoff meeting and facility tours, and at the end of the project, at the end of the 8 weeks, excuse me, not the project, but when we make the presentation of our findings. I will say too, just for your reference, although we have that start point at 1 week and then at 8 weeks, that doesn't mean that you'll hear from us only at week 1 and week 8. We, with our clients, we are constantly in communication. We usually give bi-weekly, or every other week, we'll give it a study update to see where we're at with our research. If we have any questions, if you as a client have any questions or feedback for us. So we're in constant communication. Also, one of the things that I just wanted to highlight is our relationship with our clients, that I'm the one that's, as a research director, that's overseeing the project and working directly on the work. And so if you ever have any questions, we're very responsive, so you feel free to email me or even text me, and I will respond within a few hours, if not sooner. And so we're not just taking this project and just dumping it off with someone else. We will be handling it from beginning to end, and we will be responsive and be able to give you quick answers on anything that you might need.
Yeah, and then the phase 1 valuation process would kick off in parallel to Walter and the Victus team's work. Generally, we would have 1 to 2 trips in person. We would probably overlap that initial site visit, which would really be the critical on-site component to our work. We really prioritize living, breathing, walking the facilities that we're attributing a sponsorship valuation dollar to. And so you'd kind of see a lot of the same needs and reasons for us to be there to capture the ingress and egress of your facilities and really walk it like a guest that would be coming in and out.
I saw y'all had pictures of some of our facilities in your presentation. Did y'all go in and walk those already, or somebody?
Not yet, no. Those were pulled from your guys' website.
Oh, I thought they looked good, so that was good pictures.
They were great to use, yes.
That's an internal compliment then, sir, because that's your team that took those. And then I think from the sales component, it's again, really based on what's needed in that sales cycle. So we value as an organization in-person meetings with brands and as much as we can. I would say that typically we would be in market probably every 6 weeks or so, maybe roughly quarterly, but that's again very dependent on how conversations are going with qualified candidates to become a naming rights or a sponsorship partner. For example, we're working on a project in the Northeast, and I think I've been up there 6 times since September 5th. So while we say every 6 weeks or so, there if conversations progress quickly and we're needed to be down there for a site visit or to meet with someone in person, we can hop on the next flight down and be there for those meetings. So we live out of a suitcase on the sales side. It's rare that you catch me in my Cleveland office where I am today, but typically we're at our clients' locations and meeting with brands and bringing brands into the sites and having tours and walkthroughs and whatnot as much as we can and at the pace that the brand would like to move.
All right, any other questions?
One last question, if you don't mind. Just looking at your pricing proposal, a lot of these I've seen over the years, there tends to be a change in commission based on what we actually close. Might that be something that you guys would be open to? And is this, so again, for example, 12% up to $500,000, 15% over $1 million, 20% over something like that. Is that something you might be open to?
Yeah, I think certainly open to a discussion on how we can get creative with the commission structure. I know that we have done similar engagements in the past on kind of, I guess it's a performance-based commission, right, is probably the best term to use. So
Yeah.
Happy to, as we take the next steps in this process, have that discussion and find an answer that is good for everyone on both sides of the ball here.
Yeah, great, thanks.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time and your proposal and presentation. You guys did a great job, and we appreciate the opportunity to have a discussion with you. So I guess if there's nothing else, we'll adjourn this part of the meeting and let you guys carry out the rest of your day. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, everyone.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
I have to send through the presentation document to Craig. I have your contact information if you'd like.
That'd be great, Claire. Thanks.
Yep, of course.
Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I need to run to a basketball. Do I mess our quorum up if I run to a hoops game?
No, we got a.
Beautiful. I can tell, oh yeah, I got to go to one of our fine facilities, watch some basketball. Connor thinks he's LeBron James.
I love it.
God, drives me nuts.
How are you, Robert? Right. It's good to see you. Good to see you. Everything well?
See you, brother.
Good questions. Good questions. How about that? Here to vote.
Oh, well, we don't mess around.
You're here to vote.
That's a lot better. Yeah, I mean, that's Robert. That's what I asked.
We won't think about it. Thanks, bud.
Hey, you're absolutely right to ask that question because based off of how they want to pitch it to everybody else, they have to be giving us their high dollar offer.
Oh, for sure.
And if we were to go,
This next group, they've got doing that. I almost asked them if they would work on a contingency.
No fee for the analytics. And that's a lot just to find out what it's worth.
Yeah.
We're talking about that 75,000.
Yeah.
It's already done some legwork on that too. We got a report from.
There's no fee. Maybe that's escalated.
I always like people have skin in the game.
I know.
That's a Paul. It's a Paul. That retainer. You get a free bullet. Thank you. Appreciate you.
doing? So I thought you were my mom.
Should I say what you were doing? Do you think I said what you were doing?
Are the other folks in person? They're on.
Now, he's gonna pop up here in a second.
They answered everything.
Did they get that bill corrected on address?
I don't think I've seen it.
I told Eric the day
Okay.
that
Yeah, I don't think I've seen it.
I'll remind them.
Okay, yeah. I forgot about that, honestly, after we talked about it.
Been playing lately?
Robert, what do you think?
No, of course.
Right.
Did you get a chance to hit on those new courts yet?
I haven't. Nate was asking me about them. They're pretty.
That day they opened, it was a nice day. I couldn't get out. But I talked to someone who has, and said they're slower.
You gotta have some.
Mhm.
A ton extra.
They look good.
What grade are you in?
What was that address?
7.
Our office address?
What was, it was,
It was Kurt Wade. Hey, Mike. We didn't even place the order.
Hey there, you guys hear me okay?
We can hear you good. We got some folks wandered over to the snack bar, so we'll give them just a second. Yeah, we were going to get a bill.
It's getting to be that time of day.
But it's fine if it goes to us. But I think they sent it to an old office address.
what's your current one?
It's 805 South
South
Church.
Church, yep.
Suite 4, and then 37130. Suggested.
So you're cheering, right?
It's good.
You guys back together?
1 or 2 times a week.
You wanna be here, but-
I think I'm supposed to speak, so.
They're supposed to be in tonight, right? I was just asking her about you.
No, she's supposed to.
She came over and said, like, what are you doing or something?
I said, how you doing?
And
I said, what are you
I
doing?
was like, what? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry.
When she responded like that, I knew what she thought.
Now you know how she talks to me.
So hungry, I haven't eaten lunch. I haven't eaten since this morning.
I didn't either. I grabbed her some Chick-fil-A on the way over and grabbed myself some nuggets because I was like, I'm starving.
Have we got everything to council? For council agenda? Got both policies somebody? I'm sorry, baby.
Hey, Andy, we're ready when y'all were. They call your name, but
That's what the girl getting a snack. But y'all held out the retreat minutes. Yeah. I'm gonna listen to it. And then, let me get in there.
Mid-chew.
I know.
all right. I think we've got everybody back at the table from the feed and trough, so we'll go ahead and turn it over to our contact here at Donegal Associates, and welcome. You're talking to the Murfreesboro Sports Authority, and we appreciate you taking the time and interest in our process here. We can't thank you enough, and would love for you to, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of go through an overview and tell us a little about your firm and yourself, and we'll elicit questions from there. So take it away.
I'd love to. I appreciate the time and thank you for the opportunity. And I believe in your marketplace and what you're doing with the Sports Authority just to set the tone. So I've worked in pro sports in a number of startups and turnarounds for 30 plus years. About 10 years ago, I started my own firm as I felt that I had earned enough credibility and relationships and contacts, and I had a different idea of a way I wanted to go, and that was to work in the public-private partnership sector and focus on development and take my experience from finance, from raising money, from driving revenue, how to build organizations, how to build a startup, how to do something where people said, that's impossible, you can't do it. I've been in a lot of you can't do it, that's impossible markets. Did the NHL startup in Columbus, Ohio, when nobody knew where Columbus, Ohio was. I had the good fortune of working with Craig in Arizona when they said you can't fix that, but we fixed it and sold it. I had a good opportunity to move to Memphis and take over running the Memphis Grizzlies for an owner that wanted to sell it, that had tried for 10 years to sell it. And everyone said, the NBA will never make it in Memphis. And when I came in 3 years, we fixed all the revenue streams. We rebuilt the enterprise. He sold it after 3 years for $385 million. If you've followed valuations in the NBA world, every franchise now, including Memphis, has gone up 10x. So from all that experience, I've found my way into some opportunities and made home in Memphis, made this our place of residence, and saw a lot of opportunity in this market and in other markets. So as a few examples of what we have done, and I had outlined them in the response to the RFQ. So when I was here initially, this was pre-COVID, well before pre-COVID, there was a decision to renovate the Memphis Convention Center, and at the time, the city of Memphis had become a client of mine, and the mayor brought me on and the chief operating officer and said they were new into their term in 2016, said, we don't want to figure out how we can buy tires more effectively, more efficiently, but what are the ways and opportunities that we can drive revenue in the city that aren't reliant on ad valorem tax rates? So when they said we're going to renovate the convention center, I became part of that team on the renovation, on developing the tourism development zone, and said, this is the perfect time to sell naming rights on the convention center. Did not have naming rights before, and at that time in 2016, so it was 17 and 18, we consummated the deal in 19. It's a 20-year deal, a 10-year plus 2 5-year options at an AAV right now of about $900,000, and there's only one other deal that is higher than that in North America, and that is in Detroit. The convention center renovation has garnered a number of different awards and recognitions for design and operating, and it went from an analysis of the city funding their operating loss to the tune of about $2.6 million prior to the renovation, with naming rights, some other commercial rights, with a better operation. That number is now down to $400,000. So all of these numbers add up. And, when you look at it, it wasn't just selling naming rights, but it was looking at the holistic picture of an asset that the city had. How can we actually have it drive revenue, be more efficient, and be less reliant on city budgets? Another example of a public-private partnership that we developed here in Memphis, somewhat like the Adams Tennis Center that you have, is the Leftwich Tennis Center. So the mayor came to me and said, we have the land. Dr. Rudd, who was the president of the University of Memphis at the time, they were looking for a home. And he said, we want to figure out how to build a tennis center. Can you help us get that done? Because they saw what we had done with the convention center. And I said, yeah, we'll figure it out. We'll get it done. I met the next week with the athletic director at the university, and this is one of the philosophical questions we'll get into here as we go through this process. But I had an athletic director that didn't believe we could raise the money. And I said, Tom, that has to change because the mayor wants to do it. We have the land. your president wants to do it, he believes in it, and your teams need a home. So we ventured off into hiring an architect, the general contractor. My role was to work with them, manage the overall project, but also raise the $31 million. And I went to the mayor and said, you've given the land, but I think in order for us to go raise all this money, you're also going to have to put in some capital. So a lot of the facilities that the city owned needed some capital improvement. There was a lot of deferred maintenance. So we started with the $3 million capital investment from the city. We worked with the university on a 20-year lease where instead of paying us over the 20 years, they front-loaded all that money. So through that item in our capital stack, we're able to raise $7.5 million cash up front. We secured $2.5 million from the state, and the rest of the $31 million we raised either from individuals or corporations. Corporations like AutoZone, First Tennessee Bank, Campbell Clinic, other ones. There's FedEx, Fred Smith, big tennis fan. He got behind it. And he said, I'll be in on one condition, that it stays the Leftwich Tennis Center. And 99% of Memphis didn't know why it was called Leftwich. And we learned as we went along that it's named after Colonel Leftwich, who was a colonel in the Marines and was an avid tennis player, grew up in Memphis, went to the Naval Academy. His roommate was Ross Perot, lost his life in battle. And eventually, after his passing, the tennis center was named after him. And Fred Smith, the founder of FedEx, is very much in support of the military, given his time in the military, and said, I'm in for $4 million, but we need to remain Leftwich Tennis Center. And even with all of that, we were able to raise the $31 million. It's paid for. We actually have $6 million in unencumbered account right now that we're going to use for capital reserves for not only Leftwich, but for the other 8 tennis facilities that the city owns. So it is a unique model in the country in as much as it's a home to the NCAA. It's not on the campus, not owned by the university, owned by the city, home to NCAA programs, but anyone from the public can play in there. That is not the norm. And stop me if you have any questions. I don't want to just rattle on here. Should I keep going?
Yeah, please.
Oh, okay. One other project that we worked on here in Memphis was the development of a TDZ, a tourism development zone, with the state of Tennessee to develop a sports and event center on a piece of property, again, that the city owned that had the Liberty Bowl, which is now called the Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. And with developing the Memphis Sports and Event Center, there was another 19 acres that the city owned that we are now developing under a master lease, ground lease plan. But we built out a 227,000 square foot sports and event center, 2 different halls. One is hard court, one is multi-purpose with 3,000 seats. It's owned by the city, but it is under management by a third party called ESM, and they are the at-risk manager. And it was named by the Memphis Business Journal the best new construction, large projects in 2023. It also earned the recognition of the Memphis Area Association of Realtors as the 2022 Community Impact. On an operating basis, we had forecast 700,000 door turns in year 1. We actually turned 1.2 million doors. So it is a vibrant, well-operated facility, a beautiful design, and is really doing well. One other project I worked on with the city was to secure a $350 million grant from the state. As the Titans were going through their ask for their stadium, we were going through an ask to secure funds to renovate FedEx Forum with the ultimate goal of extending the Grizzlies lease beyond 2029, adding 25 years to the lease, and also renovating Simmons Bank Liberty Stadium. That ask was tied together as it was approved and the governor forwarded the funds to the city. The Grizzlies didn't want to move as fast as the university, so we had to uncouple those two, and there were two other sources of revenue in that capital stack, actually three. An extension of the car rental tax, a portion of county sales tax, and another percent on the hotel motel tax to give us a capital stack of about $684 million. So the university came back to the city and said, you know, how do we unlock this? And Fred Smith happened to be at the table, and so the idea was broached that, okay, we will sell the stadium to the university for $1. We'll take $120 million of that $684 million, transfer that to the university. Their project cost was $220 million, and Fred Smith said, if you can raise another 50, I'll put in 50 to give you your 220. So those renovations started in January. The transfer of the stadium formally is not done yet, but it's being done. And prior to that all happening, we did a 10-year naming rights deal with Simmons Bank that pays about $680,000 a year. I also work with a 5G small cell fiber company called Crown Castle. There's 2 or 3 players in this space in the country. There's Crown Castle, who is the market leader. They're traded on the New York Stock Exchange. And when I first started doing some work for the city, there was a real issue with patrons at that time, Liberty Stadium, where there were more than 6,000 people in the stadiums, their phones didn't work. So you had public safety issues, you had guest experience issues. And Crown's model is they come in and do what's called a distributed antenna system, bring the carriers on board, and develop a small cell fiber network. And their model is such that they upfront the capital, and then there's a rev share back to the owner, which in this case was the city. And for each carrier that comes on, that rev share grows. So with 8 different agreements we've done for City of Memphis properties, Crown's investing $46 million in capital and about $30 million in 25-year cash flow. We talked a little bit about Liberty Park. Mayor also came to me in a couple of years, it's 3 years ago now, and said that Fox Sports is interested in bringing back the Memphis Showboats, and could you help us with that negotiation? So that was in, November, and in January we had a press conference with Fox Sports to unveil that the Memphis Showboats were coming back under the new USFL, which at that time was 100% owned by Fox Sports. Since that time, the USFL and XFL have merged, so the Memphis Showboats have stayed. It's a new league called the UFL, and we're no longer involved because private equity, Redbird Capital, has taken that over, and Fox is really now just their broadcast partner. So that is a really high overview of what I've done for the last 10 years. There are others outside of Memphis, but because we're talking in Tennessee, I've focused on Tennessee business development projects and success stories we've had here in the state.
Thanks. So so you've obviously looked at our project and had some conversations. What would be, your plan of attack or methodology for looking at, the evaluation process, the sales process, and kind of what are your thoughts how you would approach that with us?
Well, I modeled out a process around the Siegel Soccer Complex.
Right.
With identifying 3 partner categories. So one for the naming rights for the indoor soccer complex, that at $150,000 annual investment, 15 years with a 3% escalator, that would drive a term value of about $2.8 million. And then the next level would be 3 founding partners at a $75,000 per year annual investment. That would drive term value of $859,000. Then 20 field partners at various levels based on the proximity of where they are towards the front of the complex versus the back. All told, that would represent having to secure 24 partners. The model would generate an average annual value of $990,000 for a term value of 8.1. So that's a real life example of how I would model out one existing asset that you have.
How do you get those numbers?
I'm sorry?
How did you get those numbers?
Knowing what the value is, and I've done some rough estimation on what traffic is and what that looks like on a cost per thousand. Knowing what the marketplace looks like, what I've done in terms of value. When we went to market initially with naming rights on the convention center here, the head of tourism said, "Well, what do you think it's worth? 100,000?" And I said, "No, it's worth 600, but as on the low end, maybe 4." So we did a full analysis, went through and did the evaluation. Went to market with 650. We started at 650, and it escalated since then. We're 5 years into the deal, and it's escalated to 900,000.
I do have one question. Just you mentioned, of course, your work you've done in Memphis, which is really incredible. But you also mentioned that on this proposal that you turned in previously, that you've contracted with other Tennessee municipalities or government agencies over the last 5 years. Can you speak a little bit about those?
Sorry, not in Tennessee. I'm working on a project in Ohio, in Middletown, Ohio, that's finalizing their financing in January. And that is a 50-acre, $250 million mixed-use development with a ICE facility, hotels, mixed use. And my role is to help them build out their capital stack around similar things we're talking about. So that deal is at the finish line to close on financing on January 15th.
How do you attract or sell sponsors, and how do you know who to go after? And then what's your methodology for reaching out to them, building that relationship? Can you explain a little bit on the sales side?
Happy to. So in your market, I've already identified just on the Siegel complex, 187 prospects. Based on what I know about the companies, the research that I've done on them, what they're currently doing with the Titans, the Preds, the soccer team, either MTSU or Vanderbilt, how much they're spending in out-of-home media, some research through the Nashville Business Journal on Book of Lists, who the top employers are, top companies, what those lists are each week. So I looked at that 187 list of initial prospects, I'm sure there are many more, and categorized them into what tier I think they have the ability to spend, what levels they have been spending at, and tiered them out. So I've identified the prospects. Then it comes down to, okay, what's the asset? Let's then dig in terms of action steps, dive into the data and the analytics, segmentation of the prospects for each, I'll call it asset or property, development of an intro deck that is a case for support. And along with that, you develop your stewardship strategy, you develop those relationships. I've got a relationship with a lot of companies that are on that list of 187. So the intro deck really basically starts out with your case for support, what the value proposition is, why it's a good fit for them. And at the same time, you go into it not just with spots and dots or brand, but how do we get a partner that wants to come on board, that actually wants to activate on site or activate, with their customers or in their place of business. So that's developing the initial list. From there, after you're developing your stewardship strategy, you build your custom deck process such that a deck goes to a first horizon on a specific asset with knowledge of what you've already learned from them and what's important. And it's a custom deck built with their brand around it, with ideas for activation. looking at what their community activation and relations strategy is, what their business development strategy is, what their competitive set looks like, knowing that this could be a differentiator for them in their sector, and then having a go-to-market strategy executed. And what goes along with that is, to develop a brand around all these properties that are in Murfreesboro. And I've used a company called Placer AI, and it's a really interesting product that tracks individuals via their mobile devices. So you can geofence, let's say we want to geofence Siegel as a property. We will know on a daily basis, a weekend basis, a year-long basis, how many people came, how long they stayed, where they come from before, where they go afterwards, and what their household income looks like, their number of kids, their level of education. So it's a really good product that gives you selling data that aligns with, okay, First Horizon, you're looking for people that look like this. We've got 100,000 of them that come to this property every year, and we can reverse append some data and say, okay, you've only got 20% of the audience. We've got an 80% upside for you to go actually bring these people on as customers.
A quick question. Congratulations on the Memphis, that indoor new facility. I've been in it. It's truly amazing. I was there for a AAU basketball tournament, and it was packed. One of the things I noticed in there was the food and beverage stations there. Is that something that you put together, or was that the city that had the contract? How did that come about? And does that component also apply to the facilities here in Murfreesboro?
It does. So that was built as part of the original design with the intent that the third-party operator was either going to operate or sub that out. So the company we selected as the operator for the facility, they selected a company called the Oakview Group to come in and manage. And they did that for two reasons. They needed capital to build out, because we gave them an empty shell. So it was their responsibility to build out the kitchen. And that was about $500,000. So they needed a capital partner who was going to be an operating partner too. So they were able to secure the $500,000 in capital for a better return to them being the Oakview Group, on an operating basis every month, so that ESM got less of the gross revenue. Oakview got a higher portion of the gross revenue. So that is a not city-owned, not city-operated. It's operated by ESM and then another company on a subcontract. But there are key performance indicators that they have to go through, that they have to serve, and that we're also able to monetize and say, okay, this is a Pepsi building, and we're going to serve Papa John's pizza in here. We're going to do this hot dog brand. So we have that right to do that, and that should be done.
Thank you.
What do you see as either changes in the market or trends concerning, what these partners really want? I'm sure some of them want ROI, that's the most important. Some of them want just the recognition. You kind of hinted at a competitive spirit of, if you don't do this, your competitor in your market might, so you'd want to block them out. Where do you see the things that these sponsors and these partners, what are they wanting, and has that changed recently?
Well, I wouldn't say it's a cookie cutter across the board. It comes down to individual companies. Companies will change their position. They may develop a 5-year or 10-year plan based on growth and quarter growth and earnings per share and shareholder valuations, but that could all change. You look at the way that AI is changing things. Most companies now have an AI strategy. If there was a media component, the media landscape has changed dramatically. So to be able to come back to them and say, okay, if you really want to focus on 3 core principles that you have, company ABC, that are important to your overall mission, and if it's food insecurity, if it's youth education and youth fitness, for us to be able to come back with programs inside the facilities that activate around those 3 pillars, that really fit. So FedEx has a very strict focus under their brand of where and how they invest under what is called FedEx Cares. And if you don't fit in 1 or 2 of those 5 buckets, they're probably not going to work with you. So it's not an across-the-board specific industry. It comes down to the partner, what's important to their mission, what's the value that they place on building their business around. Is it employee retention, customer retention? Is it both? Is it community relations, government relations, or all of the above? And to be able to go back to them with things that fit within their value, vision, and mission statements. I wish it was cookie cutter. It used to be that way, but I think it's better, it's smarter now that you've got to be smarter and work harder to actually develop a program that works for each individual prospect you're talking to.
All right. Any other questions? All right.
I'll give you an example. So Renaissance Bank, they had a chairman who said, we want to invest in a very high-profile way in our top 6 markets. And I heard that, and then so when we were prospecting for naming rights for the convention center, this fit right into that desire to have something that is a high-profile, fits their brand new facility, essentially. In Nashville, they did naming rights on the soccer jersey and did a deal with Kirk Herbstreit that is more of a regional thing for them. And I'm not sure what they did in other markets, but here in Memphis, it was the convention center, and in Nashville, it was the front of the soccer jersey. 2 very different plays. You couldn't just say, well, let's do the same thing in Nashville as we did in Memphis.
Yeah, they're different plays. I think that they're both awareness vehicles, though, versus a strict ROI formula. So I guess that's what I was trying to ask is, are you seeing that the companies that typically would sponsor or partner on a project like what we have, is it more of an altruistic and name recognition and less of an ROI, or do you see that changing to be more ROI-driven, revenue-driven, to proof of concept and in-person activation, customer engagement on a face-to-face level? That's kind of where I was trying to ask. I didn't really ask it well, I don't think.
It's actually both. I'm sorry I addressed you by name, but I'm not sure who's talking. I apologize. But it's in the Renaissance case, it was our profile is not high enough in this marketplace. We don't stand out. We're well down the totem pole on awareness. They were looking for an awareness, but a big message play. But when you look at other companies, they would say, that's all well and good. And Coke, you'll hear say, I don't need more name recognition. I want a driver back to retail that's going to help me move cases in and move cases out. So it's going to come down to each prospect you're talking to and where they are in their lifespan of an entity. If they said, we're looking to drive a program that drives an ROI focused on new customers, and we want to grow in the Bitcoin space, cryptocurrency space, we're not sure how to do it, but that's one of our goals. I'm just making that up. But.
Sure. All right. Any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you so much for your time. I appreciate the opportunity to learn more about your company and your credentials and so forth. We appreciate it, and we look forward to getting back in touch with you one way or the other.
Great. Is there anything else that you are interested in hearing from me? I don't want to cut it off. I don't want to say anything more if I don't have to, but is there any bit of information that I can fill in that I haven't filled in?
Good.
I'm looking at the group, and I don't see any other questions tonight, so I will say goodbye here shortly.
Yes, well, and if there is anything, certainly follow up, and I hope we find a way to work together.
Great. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Yes.
Just-
Go ahead, Craig.
I was going to say, while I was busy while they were talking here, putting together a spreadsheet that kind of compared the rate structure, and I can pop that. I think I can. Now I can. It's up on the board here. I can pop that up, and I can blow it up. I think a little bit. So just for comparison purposes, Superlative has a significant premium all the way through their levels of commission. I know they said that we could talk to them about commission and structuring that. I think we had asked that question, and they were open to it, so we can talk to them about that. But that's just for purposes of discussion, what we're looking at as far as the differences between the two. I mean, it's clear that Superlative has much more corporate structure, and Mike with Donegal is much more individual. I will tell you, as he mentioned and as I mentioned before, I worked with Mike before in a professional team setting. And he was an interesting person because he was extremely creative, could walk in and create things out of nothing. But he was very organized as well. And you don't always find that combination together. Extremely organized because he would take a sales staff. And in a pro team, they hire a high-level staff, and then the people they put in place is usually who the owner knows, who the owner's kids know, who's the owner kid. And so you don't know who you're going to end up with. And you end up but he had a structure from suite sales, sponsorships, all the way through F&B, and really put these guys through the paces, very organized to make it successful and get through all that. So, you didn't get a chance to probably say that in his pitch there because he was focused on other things, but I will let you know that he does extreme follow-up, extreme organization as he goes through the process. And I did, for apples to apples, the $75,000 and the initial on Superlative is in the annual number. And then on the annual number for Donegal, I put in $30,000, which he did, which is what he was hired to do initially, to do a little bit of beginning preliminary assessment. So he doesn't have a preliminary assessment in there. He's already done somewhat of that, at least for Siegel, that you've seen. And so I went ahead and added that number in there just to try and get as close to apples as we could.
How do y'all feel about the two?
I think Craig's assessment is right. There are two totally different approaches.
I think
It's better.
I like the Donegal approach better than the Superlative. I think Donegal's going to give us more of your, hometown feel, touch, versus someone that's further away. And I like how he's quantified the terms over 2 years versus 8 weeks and 12 to 18 months. I think our community and our needs would be better suited with his experience, both corporately with athletics and having dealt with the city of Memphis and the community surrounding Memphis and the struggles that we all are aware are in Memphis. And the product you put out there, guys, I'm telling you, this place is top notch. And I think he'll be more accessible. So that's how I'm leaning at the moment. Plus his fee is less, and I think we've got also a financial responsibility to the community here to take that into consideration as well.
Not only, I mean, kind of building on what Ben said and the Donegal, not only, I mean, accessibility, yes, but direct communication as opposed to, well, was this one supposed to go, does this part of the question go to the Victus team, or which person at Superlative would this be targeted to? I mean, that's just larger corporations. That's what happens. I'm sure they do a wonderful job. That's why they are larger. But for our purposes, I feel like Donegal could attain our goal that we're looking for without getting into too much of the corporate structure.
I agree, and that's what I thought when we were talking to them first, because, okay, Victus does this, and who does this? But one thing I will say that does concern me about Donegal, it sounds like it's a one-man show. Maybe he has a team, but if he were to get sick or something, the other group has a team, very much so. But I agree with you. He's my favorite because he understands relationships, and you can tell he can talk to anyone. He could come into this community and get a good feel. So he's my choice as well, but I am concerned that, is it just him? Do we know?
Craig, you know?
Yeah, generally it's just him. Otherwise, he does subcontract with some people when he needs them to come in. He's pretty good about pulling in resources when he needs them. But generally speaking, Mike does a lot of the work. He does the pitches. I've seen his product when he puts it out for sales. He talked about the sales deck. Some of that's pretty sophisticated that he uses. And so obviously he has a team that's a contractor that will put that together, if not the city resources. And sometimes he used the city of Memphis, and we probably use ours internal because we have some really talented people that do that. So that's, and he's pretty good about asking about that, and in a very nice Canadian type way. Mike's Canadian. I don't know if you could tell by some of the accent, but yeah, boot. So yeah.
Well, what you were saying, Robert, I mean, it's one of those, that's a very good point, which I like his terms, because we're not having that flat fee up front at $75,000. Yeah. I'm sure the city's legal department can structure his contract, or if something happens, the monthly installment payment would also stop.
Yeah, it'd be a personal service contract, so obviously he wouldn't, if he did have to back out for some health reasons or something, then yeah, we would just end that contract and then go to the next, maybe at that point in time, Superlative would be or that type of level would be what we'd go. I think it's a good start to come in with someone who's going to put a lot of personal touch into it as we build this out, and then if we need to in the future.
Well, it sounds like we've got the making of a motion perhaps here coming up. Does anybody want to, I know we want to go ahead, and I think it'd be the best interest of the authority as well as the city to go ahead and make a decision tonight. So that way we can go ahead and get going and get a jump on it, unless anyone has an objection to doing that. So if
I'll
there's...
make a motion to approve Donegal. I liked him a lot. I liked that he didn't have a PowerPoint and he read straight off of it. Like, don't be a nerd and read on the PowerPoint. Like, that guy went up there, like, freebase, did the whole thing, and I trusted him a lot more. So I like him. I don't care about the cost.
So we have a motion to approve and hire Donegal. Is there a second?
Second.
All right. Is there any more discussion about it? All right. Call for question.
Mr. Adams?
Aye.
Mr. Ezel?
Aye.
Mr. Parsley?
Aye.
Ms. Polk?
Aye.
Mr. Turnbow? Oh, he left, sorry. Mr. White?
Aye.
Chair Latour?
Aye. Motion passes. All right, the next item for discussion tonight is the authority budget. And you can see you have an attachment for the fiscal year from January 1 to June 30. Looks like it's in the amount of $250,000. Craig, do you want to talk about this? Is there anything to discuss? Because that's what we're getting.
Well, the city was kind enough, Aaron was kind enough to raise a check for $250,000. That'll get us going probably through the year until we get some revenues in. We didn't project any revenues. I would assume before the end of this fiscal year, which would be June of '25, that there would be some revenues in there that would change these numbers. So we'll update it as we go.
Okay. Well, we do need action to approve this budget.
Yeah.
All right. Is there a motion to approve the proposed budget?
Move to approve the budget.
All right, Andy, is there a second? All right. Any discussion? All right, call for question.
Mr. Adams?
Aye.
Mr. Ezell?
Aye.
Mr. Parsley?
Aye.
Ms. Polk? Mr. White? Chair LaTour.
Aye. Thank you. Is there any other business to come before the authorities tonight?
Not from staff.
What are the next steps with
Okay.
Donegal?
Yeah, Nate just brought that up too. We have their contract. We asked them to send it to us. We'll get that over to legal, have them take a look at it, turn it around. We'll put it on an agenda for council for information purposes, just so they know what we're doing. And then once we vet through all those processes, we'll sign it and start working.
All right. So next agenda item is future meetings. Do we want to have one?
I think, well, yeah, sometime in the future, we should probably have a meeting.
We all agree. We were.
I think if we target, with the holidays coming up and everything, if we target into February, beginning of March, we should have an idea of really how we've got things rolled out, and give the Sports Authority an update on that. If anything happens that we would need the board, then we'd probably ask for a quicker meeting, but that's kind of a date I think we should shoot for now that's realistic for an update.
Well, we'll just wait
Yeah.
word on the next meeting then.
Yeah, we'll circulate and get consensus on when everybody's available.
Right. Well, this concludes the business for this evening, and I will go ahead and declare the meeting adjourned.
Thank you.
all.